On May 25th through May 28th of 2023, well-known Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro player and content creator Joshua Schmidt tortured himself on livestream. In a 72-hour period of time, he spent 62 hours live on Twitch playing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel's World Championship Qualifiers event. In this event, duelists compete to earn an invitation to represent their region on the world stage, an opportunity that an extremely slim few Yu-Gi-Oh! Players ever get the chance to experience. Master Duel is one of the simplest ways to participate in Worlds, circumventing the multiple tiers of tournaments that one would have to do well at to qualify for the TCG. No acquiring real cards, no WCQ invite to get, no rounds of Swiss, no traveling, just one 3-day event stood between Josh and his 5th Worlds invite. At the time, Josh's livestream quickly became a topic of intense discussion. People knew about how taxing the grind to do well at these events was on paper, of course. The WCQ event system is a carbon copy of the Duelist Cup in Master Duel, which itself traces its roots back to similar tournaments held in Yu-Gi-Oh's Duel Links app. However, it's one thing to know that the players topping these events are playing hundreds of games in dozens of hours, but it's very different to see it with your own eyes. Josh barely slept that weekend.
The tournament went on for 72 hours, and I have slept a total of, I think it was 9. I've slept 9 hours in 3 days.
His only breaks were to briefly use the bathroom, refill his water bottle, or quickly prepare something to eat. Any time spent away from the computer meant that other players could be climbing and threatening his placement. At the end of the weekend, Josh had played 421 games of Master Duel and placed 13th in the qualifier overall, netting him a spot as one of 2 players to lead a team of 3 from Europe to Worlds that year. His team would later go on to win the 2023 World Championship, cementing the precedent that in order to prove you're the best, you have to be willing to hurt yourself. The format of Duelist Cup and the World Championship qualifiers, which I will refer to as just the Duelist Cup from here on out, has been scrutinized by many people because of the intense demand it has on competitors. 2-time Duelist Cup champion and Master Duel WCQ winner Tasku commented on the extreme grind during a rare English interview through a translator on Farfa's livestream in June of 2023.
And for the first 24 hours straight, he pumped himself with energy drinks, so he would fall asleep. And he didn't eat a single thing during those 24 hours. So basically, the first 24 hours were really harsh. He actually fell asleep twice, the 2 times at least, it made him lose the game, which was, for example,
Wait, he fell asleep mid-game?
Mid-game, yeah.
2024 Master Duel World Champion YuGiOh has won 2 of these tournaments and talked about it at length on the Heart of the Cast podcast hosted by Joshua Schmidt and Farfa. On air, he had mixed feelings about the format.
I do think the format's actually relatively skillful. In terms of being a format where you want someone to be able to give it their all and then be well prepared and potentially go to Worlds, I think it's successful. But I also think it's obviously not healthy and it has to change in some way. Because the fact that I slept for 18 hours the first time and got 3rd, and then the time where I got 1st, I slept for maybe 10 hours the whole weekend. I'm kind of just more scared that if this keeps happening, that I don't know if it has with Duel Links, that someone's eventually gonna actually hurt themselves by doing one of these.
What makes this interesting is that many competitors also report that the Duelist Cup is a very skillful format. You can see it in the results. The same players like Tasku, Ryan, and a dozen others are able to keep placing highly in it, tournament after tournament. This is definitely rare for TCGs, which have a healthy dose of randomness because you draw a hand of cards from your deck every game. When I asked Worlds competitor MD Grinder about his September 2024 Duelist Cup grind in a Twitter DM, he stated,
I think the DC Cup format is very good and rewards the best players, but it's very different than a regular YCS tourney, so it takes some time to get used to how it's played, / how the meta changes over the weekend.
Ryan Yu felt very similarly, stating this on the podcast.
in terms of like a world's qualification based on skill, it's like decent. Not to like sound arrogant, but I think it is decent for that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why you see like there are like 5 people who top 10 both. So I don't think it's just complete luck.
What's tricky about this issue is that the skillfulness of the format and the intense grind it demands are tied together. Due to the nature of statistics, the only way to measure the impact of an individual player's deck building and decision making is by tracking performance over a large number of games. In Yu-Gi-Oh, luck will be a factor that determines whether or not you lose or win many games, but over a large enough sample size, you can begin to account for it and rank players by the differences in their deck building and technical play. This mitigation is important in allowing talented players like Tasku and Ryan to continually perform well, which might not be as reliably replicated in a tournament with fewer games like a YCS, though Ryan has topped plenty of those too. This correlation between games played and skill displayed is a serious problem, and the amount of grinding must be reduced for the health of the competitors. However, this doesn't mean it's impossible. Master Duel is by no means the first game to host ladder tournaments. Pokemon Showdown is an online Pokemon battle simulator you can access from any web browser. With just a couple clicks, you can create an account, build a team, and compete against thousands of other trainers on a ranked ladder. Players are matched up and ranked on an Elo-based system, not unlike the Duelist Cup. Why is this relevant, you might ask? Well, every year, competitive Pokemon organization Smogon hosts the official ladder tournament, or OLT, which makes use of one of the Pokemon Showdown ladders for its qualification phase. OLT's 4 cycles are week-long ladder tournaments where players that place well can qualify for playoffs and the opportunity to win the whole thing. This is obviously completely different from Master Duel's Duelist Cups, which are 4 3-day-long ladder tournaments where players that place well can qualify for Worlds and the opportunity to win the whole thing. Something that might immediately jump out to you is that OLT's laddering phases are a week long. Not only that, they are held back to back throughout the entire month of August every year. If the Duelist Cups are anything to go by, that means lots of energy drinks, protein bars, 4 hours of sleep, and 20 hours of Pokemon per day, right? Luckily, we can easily look at the numbers. According to this year's OLT, the average qualifying player played around 161 games, winning 113 of them and losing 48. Though this might sound like a lot, keep in mind that Joshua Schmidt played around 200 games of Master Duel just on the 3rd day of his WCQ stream in 2023 alone. Playing 160 games at the same rate would have taken him just 19 hours, less than a third of the time. Josh could have qualified for this Duelist Cup OLT hybrid during his 3-day weekend, watched all 64 episodes of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and still had enough time to get 10 hours of sleep every night. To directly compare the experience one might have when attempting to qualify for OLT, I made a Reddit post with some questions for people who qualified about things like the amount of time spent playing, strategies used to cope with the fatigue, and what had to be forgoed while laddering. I got a response from OLT 11 qualifier 3D, who was forwarded my questions by Smogon forum moderator YuGiOh. Thanks a lot, both of you. Comparing his answers to the experiences of Tasku, Ryan, and Josh is honestly just comical. Question 3. Did you ever have to forego anything important in your personal life in order to play Pokemon when playing OLT? For example, work, school, eating, sleeping, chores, errands, exercise, time with friends/family, etc.?
No, I only had to play 1 hour a day, so it was fine.
Question 4. Did you ever suffer from fatigue when playing OLT, either mental or physical? If so, did you do anything specific to combat it?
Yes, at the end of the hour, I was getting tired of Pokemon, so as I was higher up on the ladder, I would only do 1 game at a time, and it was whenever I felt like it, to make sure I was always at my peak playing condition.
What the fuck, bro? If I was good at Pokemon, I could qualify for OLT just using the allotted screen time I had when I was 10. While 3D's number of games played was on the low end, you would have to multiply his hours spent by over 8 times to equal what Josh and Ryan reported playing Master Duel for to go to Worlds. This was also over the course of a week, meaning it could be incorporated into his schedule in a much more healthy manner. But you have to wonder, why would the number of games played be so different for this compared to Duelist Cup? Well, there are a couple of factors at play here. For starters, it's tough to judge exactly how many people compete in the average Duelist Cup Stage 2 versus play on the Showdown ladder, since a larger player base can only mean more grinding required to do well. Only a couple hundred people participate in OLT each cycle, but OLT players routinely get to the top of the Showdown ladder over the course of their week and compete against non-OLT players. So for the purposes of this, I think it's fair to take the total number of OU players during OLT into consideration for this comparison. From the Smogon stats page, we know that throughout the month of August when OLT occurred, 1,141,008 battles were played in OU, or 285,252 each cycle. If we make the extremely generous assumption that each player on the ladder plays the 15 battles required for the 50% chance of seeing every Pokemon in Overused each day, if you don't know what any of that means, don't worry, we can make a guess at the number of players each week. Since each game has 2 players, Showdown's OU ladder is seeing at the very least 5,430 distinct players each OLT cycle. The real number has to be much higher, but let's get back to that in a bit, since we still have this shitty estimation to do on the Duelist Cup. There's even less data to go off of here, since Duelist Cup lacks any sort of public stats outside of Steam charts, which are about as useful as this number on the Showdown homepage. They're all playing rand bats. The best we can do is look at the placings, which have rewards for the top 10,000 duelists, meaning that there are at least 10,000 duelists. I couldn't find a lot of information for what the cutoff tends to be around for the top 10,000 outside of this Reddit post from a player who scored 14,265 points and got the prestigious 9,802nd place in the March 2023 Duelist Cup. While the event is going on, the full rating leaderboard goes out to 20,000th place, and from my own experience playing Stage 2, I know that you only need a few thousand points to get on the leaderboard. So my guess would be that the total number of Stage 2 duelists who play any ladder matches at all might be in the 40,000s. There's no real way to know for sure, but I wanted to get across that while I do think Duelist Cup participation is much higher than the number of people playing OU on Showdown during OLT, these tournaments are probably in a similar order of magnitude from each other. Additionally, there's the factor of who qualifies to mention. OLT is rather simple, with the 8 best participating players qualifying each cycle. Master Duel is a little more roundabout. During the Duelist Cup, the winner will go to Worlds. In the WCQ, the highest placing player in each of the 5 regions will go to Worlds. Additionally, 2 more teams of 3 can qualify by having the highest number of points collectively after all the Duelist Cups of that year. These players can earn these points at each respective Duelist Cup. The system is kind of an all-or-nothing approach. In order to get to Worlds, you are incentivized to win the Duelist Cup, or just in your region in case of the WCQ. There is no point where you can be considered comfortably in the top 8 and take a break, since nothing less than first is good enough.
Do I take a break? It's going so well, though. Nah. I don't think 44 is going to be enough.
Once you have qualified by winning, you can invite 2 other players to be on your team at Worlds. Qualifying via points is a nice compromise, but only 6 Worlds players get to go due to their consistent performance. This means that of the 36 players at Master Duel Worlds, theoretically only 16 of them need to have played in any of these tournaments to get there, which is its own can of worms. We should also discuss the fact that while OLT is played on an established ladder, Duelist Cup starts every player from 0 DP. This means that the top of the DC ladder consistently grows over the course of the weekend. This can cause problems with matchmaking, since until the tournament begins to shake out, matchups could be wildly unbalanced. This is fairly standard, and is even encouraged through the way that many tournaments for other games are seeded, but is a difference that we will get back to later. Let's also briefly touch on the type of games we're comparing here. In a lot of ways, competitive Pokemon has many similarities to a card game like YuGiOh. Both games are turn-based, require the player to decide and build a deck or team that they will use, and have an element of hidden information around these decisions. I have a video all about this kind of thing if you're interested. Both games include elements of skill expression in both their technical play and team and deck building choices, but also include a heavy dose of RNG. No matter how good of a player you are, you will lose games of Yu-Gi-Oh! To your opponent's hand being better than yours, and you will lose games of Pokemon to your opponent scoring a critical hit or getting some kind of beneficial status effect.
As the earthquakes yet again. Yo, I beat this thing. Oh, it's fire type too? Yo! It's fine, it's fine. Oh no, he crit me, I lost! Oh shit, he crit me, I lose.
If the two were directly compared though, you would probably conclude that RNG would have a greater impact on Master Duel than Pokemon. In Josh's climb, he won 58% of the matches he played, and the vast majority of the games he lost were due to factors outside of his control. This is less than the average of OLT qualifiers, who collectively won 73% of their games. Though it's a factor in both, I think luck is much more of a factor in Master Duel compared to Pokemon. However, the win rate statistics of this do come with a bit of an asterisk. Josh was known for switching to Sprite during his May 2023 WCQ climb. He got to the top of his region with tier limits at the height of their strength, and made the active choice to change strategies. He didn't necessarily do this because he thought Sprite was the better deck from a win rate perspective.
It is infinitely faster, I will say that. Even if at the end of the day, for over a long period of time, it's probably gonna have a lower win rate. But I don't know, it's like fast. That's a benefit. And it's kind of relaxing after that much tier.
This is present in the data too. On Josh's first 24-hour stream of laddering with mostly tier limits, he played 133 games. On his second 24-hour stream, where he played mostly Sprite, he was able to play 203. I don't have great data on Josh's win rates between his time laddering with Sprite versus the Shizu tier limit during this format, because he played a mix of decks on day 3, but I can say that many people in the top 100 of the WCQ also played decks that won or lost quickly. Of the 36 players with recorded deck lists on Master Duel meta for this event with almost full power Ishizu tier limits, 25 reported playing decks like Exosister, Sprite, Numeron, Pendulum, or similar strategies for at least some of their time climbing. Though these decks are different from each other, all of them lack the complicated game states and the grind game of tier limits, which should mean that games wrap up much more quickly than a tier mirror. With this in mind, we begin to circle around an interesting question. What is it that makes speed so important in Master Duel, to the point where people would consider a strategy that they feel might sacrifice win rate in exchange for it? In OLT, win rate is king. People usually don't need to prioritize efficiency since they are not coming close to grinding for the majority of the ladder tournament. A number of people even qualified with less than 100 games played due to their exceptional win rate. This is why 3D only played an hour at a time at the top of the ladder, to keep his mind fresh in order to ensure his win rate was as high as it could be. Though the influence of luck is more of a factor in Yu-Gi-Oh!, this alone does not account for what is causing the extreme grind in Duelist Cup. We have to look at the scoring system. Earlier, when I said that the Elo system of Showdown wasn't unlike Master Duels,
I was actually using an advanced technique there called Lion.
In reality, the devil really is in the details here. To see the difference, we need to understand what Elo actually is. Elo, named after its inventor Arpad Elo, it's not an acronym so it really annoys me when people don't capitalize it like this, is a system for ranking the talents of players that are playing competitive games. It was originally invented for chess and has been expanded for use across a variety of games. The basic idea is that when you are playing a ladder, you will gain and lose points from your Elo score depending on whether you win or lose your matches. In a game where your Elo is higher than your opponent's, you are expected to win that game more often than not, and thus you will gain less than the average number of points for a win. If you are the underdog, however, expect to gain many points for a win against a higher rated opponent. There's a bit of math that goes into this that models each player's range of skills on a distribution and uses it to calculate their odds of winning. In most games, people do not perform at the same level every time, but are influenced by an uncountable number of factors like how much they've practiced, if they got enough sleep the night before, if their significant other recently broke up with them, and if they drew max C. There's an exceptional video on this by Singing Banana that explains it very well, so if you're interested in the math of how Elo actually works, I would highly recommend it. Typical implementations of Elo like showdowns factor in each player's forecasted odds of winning after the game into how much rating they gain and lose. If you tune into any game on the showdown ladder, you'll see that in almost every instance the winner and loser gain and lose the same amount of points, because showdown has a very standard implementation of Elo with only a handful of creative liberties taken. By comparison, the Duelist Cup's implementation is very creative. It's a little tougher to get data on how it works, however. If you're wondering how I have so much information about Joshua Schmidt's performance in the May 2023 WCQ, it's because I spent around 5 hours of my life combing through his entire 62 hours of stream VODs and meticulously recording how many points he gained and lost. You can find my spreadsheet on patreon.com/OutOfCharacters, by the way. It was not worth it, but at least the results are interesting. This is a histogram showing the distribution of the points lost after each of the 177 games Josh lost. This histogram has a bucket size of 10, meaning that each bar graph represents all the games with losses in a given 10-point range. There are a couple of observations we can make about it. The first thing that I noticed is that there's a sharp peak here in the distribution. This lines up with the median of the dataset, which is 1068 DP lost. Secondly, you might notice that there are a number of outliers on the left, but there is a sharp cutoff for 1200 DP on the right of the chart. Something I learned while doing the research for this video is that Master Duel has a couple of rules that constrain how much DP you can gain or lose in a given game. Two of them are that you cannot lose more than 1200 DP for a loss, and that if you have less than 9000 DP, you will lose less for a loss. All of these outliers were losses Josh had in this early range. With that out of the way, let's look at the histogram of points from Josh's wins. Can you guess if there might be any other rules to this system? Anyone? Any other rules? This chart is fucking ridiculous. Did you know that of the 421 games Josh played, 205 of them, 49%, were games where he won and gained exactly 1,000 points. You might be wondering, why is this a problem? Well, this change breaks one of the fundamental principles of the Elo system. Competitors should gain and lose the same amount of points. Josh gains 1,000 points so often in his stream because he is a good player and performing at the top of the ladder. Therefore, in most of his games, he is playing against people below him in rating. By the rules of Elo, Josh should be gaining fewer points against the people he is expected to beat, but because of the 1000 point minimum, his rating is being bolstered. This completely breaks an Elo system, which should expect higher and higher win percentages against average players the higher you climb on the ladder. With these caps, you're guaranteed to climb assuming you maintain a win rate of at least 55%, even if you always gain the minimum and lose the maximum. Doing this calculation using the real values averaged from Josh's last 24 hours of streaming, he could have climbed indefinitely with a win rate of as little as 52%. These evil rules are what turns the Duelist Cup into a tournament that requires you to play as much as possible, because the risk-reward is all off. You are hardly ever incentivized to sit on your current score because climbing does not become riskier the higher you get, thus demanding a higher performance from those looking to be at the top. Instead, Duelist Cup assumes players will climb, and instead compares the rate at which they climb. A rate that can be improved by being a significantly better player than your competitors, but can also be improved by playing more games with a faster deck and denying yourself important human needs like sleeping. This decision to change one of the fundamental rules of how Elo works is one of the biggest reasons why I think players need to play for 60 hours to win the Duelist Cup. With all this in mind, let's briefly talk about how I think the system could be fixed. From here on, I don't have a ton of data to support my assertions, so these will just be my opinions. Obviously, I think Duelist Cup needs a real Elo system. Systems like Pokemon Showdown or even Master Duel's own Rating Duels feature are much more reasonable implementations of Elo. If you go into Master Duel and look at the results for Rating Duels every season, a lot of the same people are doing well. These are talented players, and many of them are people who have done well in Duelist Cups. I would be curious to know how much grinding they do to achieve their spot, but since this video is already getting kind of long, I'm not going to delve into it. One thing to consider is that when using Elo in a ladder where everyone starts with no points, you will end up in situations where players at the top might be put in a position where they will frequently be matched against opponents with fewer points. This scenario is why Josh gained 1,000 points so frequently during his climb. When this crops up, it would mean that wins would net top players very few points as the rest of the ladder struggles to catch up, and it would become very risky to ladder once you make it to the top. I think this is ultimately a good thing, because it might incentivize people to take a break and come back to it a few hours later for better returns. However, it might be worth considering just having Stage 2 of the Duelist Cup take place directly on the Rating Duel ladder for a limited period similar to OLT, perhaps with players who already have access to Rating Duels carrying over their points. This might allow for better matchmaking at the top level, minimizing the gamble of playing against opponents with much lower elo. It could provide an extra incentive to climb the ladder and perform well in Rating Duels as well. This might give those at the top an advantage that might be too tough to surmount by people qualifying from Stage 1, it's difficult to say. It would only work if an exceptional player can climb to the top of the ladder within a reasonable number of games, as it does with Showdown. In the Heart of the Cast episode with Ryan Yu, there are a number of other ideas Ryan, Josh, and Farfa present to help fix the Duelist Cup, like limiting the number of games people can play or hours they have to compete. I do think some of these suggestions have legs, but most of them also have some kind of additional downside that I think fixing the Elo system lacks. This is an aside, but I would also like to get rid of the 3 vs 3 invitation system for players winning the Duelist Cup. There is no reason that people should be able to attend Worlds due to an invitation received from another player and not as a result of them playing the game. If the 3 vs 3 format is going to be kept, I think the Duelist Cup rankings should be determined by the average score of all 3 team members that you register with. Additionally, I think teams that are already qualified for Worlds should be marked in the in-game leaderboards to not incentivize unneeded grinding. With that, I am out of characters, so I guess this video's over. This has been by far my most ambitious video essay to date, so I'm super happy that it's done. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks to Bill, my Patreon supporter. If you want to see new videos early and gain access to my scripts and notes, like the spreadsheets used in this video, you can find my Patreon link in the description below. As always, thanks for watching.
Hello guys, the DB Grinder here, and today we're back at it again with another 365 day of straight gooning.